You are listening to Sober Motivation Radio. If you haven't already, crush that like button and crush that subscribe button. Welcome to Sober Motivation Podcast Episode 6, Crushing It in Sobriety. This episode is about sobriety and understanding how to continue, but also finding your own route to success. So somebody I am looking to talk about is Gary Vaynerchuk, who is the author of the book Crushing It. He is a great inspiration and highly motivational and somebody completely worth checking out. So this somewhat embodies the idea of sober motivation and giving inspiration and ideas to those not only working on recovery, but finding a meaningful path that they are passionate about working on. So in this book that I'm reviewing with the affiliation that I have with Blinkist, this book is called Crushing It with Gary Vaynerchuk, who is a fantastic person to follow and watch. His inspiration and wisdom is just constantly just glowing. And this is where the inspiration for this podcast came from him. And I thought about it and I thought, well, why not crushing it in sobriety? And so I see some people who are in the communities that I follow that are curious about what to do with themselves. And this was something that I know that I was facing myself, was what do I do with myself? And so that's why I began building this podcast, because I need something to do. And I'm sure all of you guys are in that same boat where if you're facing boredom, it looks like going back is a better option than staying sober, but it's not. So I'm going to start off with the points that are being made in the book Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. The first point that is made is finding your own route to success. So it then goes into saying a strong personal online brand is now one of the clearest paths to entrepreneurial success. And it brings up the idea that if you ask a kid today what they want to do when they grow up, there's a possibility that they might say that they want to be a YouTuber, and it's laughed at. And it is funny to think about that YouTube is somebody's full-time profession, but the reality is that there are people out there in YouTube making quite a bit of money doing actually what they just love to do. So that is the point of giving you guys this idea in the mindset that if you're bored and you have no outlets to work on anything for yourself, that I strongly believe that you guys can work on yourself. So it talks about how social media is a game changer and it lets you broadcast to a mass audience. And it talks about the stats of YouTube in that 1.25 billion hours of YouTube are watched every day. And they post 66,000 photos or videos on Instagram every single minute. And on average, 20% of the time people dedicate to mobile is spent on Facebook. So the scale and power of social media platforms makes it possible for any of us to actually make money from developing what is a personal brand. And it also talks about how with only 1,000 followers, somebody on Instagram can earn up to $5,000 per year just posting 2 posts per week. So that is actually not a bad side income. So it also talks about what if you were doing more than twice a week. And this is the other point that I wanted to make with regards to this is somebody was saying how they were bored in their sobriety or it's just not a good thing. But this is where your sobriety, in my opinion, or my sobriety, in my opinion, has what's called a compounding interest. So, to point out this fact, when I first got sober and I hadn't drank, obviously I was miserable. And it's sort of the same thing when you think about the idea of if, say, you put $100 into the bank and it's just sitting there. Well, yeah, it's boring to just see it when you first put it in there. It's not much excitement, but when you see it growing over time with just the interest that it has from whatever financial institution that you put into it, it gets better. So this is where I believe that the compounding interest of sobriety really shines. So, for instance, if you're sober and you're working steadily on being sober, not just staying sober, I think it's good to be sober, but I think you can actually work on it and build the value of your sobriety in that moment where it's not just, hey, I'm sitting here and I'm sober and I've got nothing to do. Because I'm telling you, one thing that one of my sponsors that I had when I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous mentioned to me was that I can do whatever I want. And that was a pretty eye-opening experience for myself, because here I was just getting out free totally for the day. I didn't have any real commitments going on for the day, and I had to figure out what to do. And the only thing that I could not do was drink. And so to figure out how to fill that time, I was thinking to myself, do anything I want. And it just opened up the doors for me where I was excited, kind of nervous about it, but it's cool once you figure it out, because it's so liberating that you can do whatever you want with your time. So this suggestion of maybe working on a personal brand might be something worth looking at for yourself or for anybody. And having the time and finding the time to do so, it's daunting. It's a daunting task, I'm not going to lie. So for myself personally, since I've been building up this brand called Sober Motivation, which is a personal brand to me, and to give another point to all of this, so for my actual name, somebody goes by my name also, and he has that name under pretty heavy copyright, so it is what it is. And I'm not trying to go find an alias or anything like that to try to be on the same idea, because I feel like what I'm building now actually offers a lot more value to people than just being, hey, this is me, hey, look at what I'm doing. I think that the idea of sober motivation is something that I can create far more value with than just going under my own name. So for me, it is what I would consider a personal brand. And if some of you guys are in that position where your name's not under crazy copyright from somebody else, then I think it just opens up more doors for you. So the next point it goes on to make, it says building a personal brand offers multiple routes to personal and financial success. So whether you want to attain riches or just make some cash on the side, a personal brand executed on social media can make it happen. And I think that is certainly true. I think that for myself with building the brand, and I want to go into this idea too of attaining riches and making cash. So for myself, I'm not just hooking into the idea of cash. I see cash as a vehicle to do other things. So my real rich that I enjoy more than anything else is education. So as I'm building this social media brand, I've found that my education in just different aspects of life has just blown up, and the things that I've come to learn about or get some clarity on, I think, has been pretty profound for myself. So I take that for what it is. Maybe you guys can take it for what it is as well. So the next point that this book makes on Blinkist. It says there are 7 principles that really matter when you build your social media content. It says a house built on weak foundations will fail, and the same is true of your social media content. And I have actually found that to be pretty true as well. I think that the foundation has been extremely important with me personally with building this brand, because for one, it's testing me, but I love it. So for instance, if you guys caught the YouTube video that I made about how I was able to avoid a relapse and how I figured out just leaving where I was at to go do something else instead of being in the situation. I drove down, I browsed cars instead of being hit again with drinking. I felt the brand that I've been building, just even though I've only been working on it for about a month, having the idea that it wasn't just something that I've been building for a sake of money, but it's the idea of I have to stay sober and avoid self-destruction. So it gave me foundation, honestly, more. So that's why I say, though, find something that you feel like you can build with strong foundation. So if it's something that you can't find longevity out of, for instance, think about what you can find longevity out of. So I found sober motivation as a longevity thing, because for me, I have to stay sober. Otherwise, as the older I'm getting, I can see that a relapse would be the total end of me completely, and probably this brand, since it's so young at this point, but it is what it is. So then it goes on to say, so what really matters? It's pretty simple. There are 7 principles you need to nail. The first is authenticity. People can always smell a fake, so don't disrespect your audience. Be real. And I think that's important to talk about. I think that this brand, since it's been actually growing on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, without really me doing too much work into it, I'll have to say I do pursue some direct engagements with YouTube in trying to get people into that funnel, since it seems like that is where it's easiest to just get all of that continuous content for people to consume is important. But when you go to the videos, obviously, whatever I'm talking about is the real deal of what's actually on my mind, including this episode also, which is crushing it in sobriety. So I would say if you're in the mindset that you're looking to build your personal brand, to just be authentic with what you're doing. So that goes into the next point. It says you also need to be passionate, whether for your product, your life, or the process of being an entrepreneur. It's passion that will keep you going when things get tough. And I also will agree with that. Being passionate is such an important thing. And I've heard some people discuss the idea that it's not just believing in yourself. I think actually I got this idea from Elliot Hulse, who is a fantastic social media influencer. He says it's not just about believing in yourself, it's about finding what you're passionate about. And so for me, that was important to figure out. And I found that motivation and staying sober is something that I've been extremely passionate about, because for one, I like to do things. I like to go get things done. And two, the sobriety issue for me is that I know that drinking erases my brain. So being sober and being motivated are two things that I can stay passionate about. So that's my life or my process. So maybe there's something else that you're passionate about. I know that I've crossed people who are passionate about, say, working on their vehicles, and that's just what they love to do. And I think that is something fantastic that you can go into, or whatever else that you find that is just something you love to do. Maybe it could be creating art or creating woodwork or something like that. So the next point, it says, patience is a virtue, goes the old saying, and it's true here. Building something new takes time. Accept that. And I think that's a good point to make. I think something that I've figured out along the way as I've been building it, even to just get to the subscribers that I have now and to get to the following that I have now, although it's small, I appreciate it, but I also see the long term of what it's going to take to build it, and I have to accept the idea that it's not just going to be an overnight thing. It's going to be a concentrated effort to make it grow for myself, and so it is what it is. And then it says, what else is virtuous? Hard work. If you want to crush it, you don't have time to spend your lunch break watching cat videos on YouTube or evenings binging Walking Dead. Get on Twitter and make some connections. And I have got to agree with that point also. I believe your hard work is extremely virtuous, and it's been extremely virtuous with me building this brand. Honestly, I've found that just for instance, the podcast course that I took from Ryan Helms and Daxi Perez, it took time and it kind of took me some effort to sit there and go through the course, but in the end it was totally worth it, since I've been able to produce consistent content. And so that just is what it is. And then the other thing too is that I've noticed for myself, when I wake up, as I'm watching my different social media feeds grow, I also realize that I have to go work on it also. So for me to expect it to just sit there and grow on its own is naive of me to think. So I think going into these social media platforms and managing them as correctly as I can, between being on Instagram, posting daily content, being on YouTube, posting consistent content, being on Facebook, managing that content, it's a lot of work, but it's paying off as I'm doing it. So I think that's important. So the next point, it goes on into saying, it says, the world is moving fast, so you need to pay attention and move with speed. What are the latest trends? Is there a new platform you should be on? Look forward and don't waste time. So that's a pretty interesting point to make, and I think it's been extremely important for me to be paying attention to. So I think trying to understand trends, I think if you're looking at going into, say, perhaps building a personal brand is something that's extremely important. I think a topic that I can relate to this is my brother, actually, he's running a vape smoke shop, and he's not just selling what he thinks is working or what he likes personally. He looks at what's actually selling or what's actually growing, and it's something that I think has been worthwhile for me to look at also. So I look at, for instance, when I'm putting out a YouTube video, I like to look at what's getting a lot of views quickly. So something that I've noticed between the podcasts and the vlogs that get a lot of views quickly, the vlogs kill it. They almost double the podcast view counts, but the podcasts still get consistent view times. So for me, since the podcasts are relatively easy to produce, I still produce them, and then with the extra time that I have, I look at writing out what I'm going to do for a vlog, since I don't think that doing a bunch of vlogs would work well, because for one, the quality of the vlog would probably fall. So I've structured it so that there's a daily podcast, because there's constantly ideas that are coming in, and I don't want to let it build up too much. So I do what I can to manage it, decide what priorities of ideas are there that I believe I need to go talk about and get out onto my platforms. And then along the ways, I'm still looking at doing the vlogs, which after my work days is when I'm looking at filming the vlogs and doing the editing, because the vlogs, honestly, if I'm doing a decent vlog, it's going to take me at least, I would say, between 8 to 10 hours between recording and editing and getting the thumbnails and doing all that just right is kind of a tedious task. So rather than just put out, say, crappy content that I can't totally make reason to publish, I basically just break it down. And so the next point it makes, it says, finally, you need the right intent, and that you need to not be in it only for the money. So it seems counterintuitive, but it's true. All the best influencers and entrepreneurs are altruistic. They're driven by providing service and value, and they love teaching and helping others. And I think that that is actually important. For me personally, for instance, this brand is about helping people. It's something that is bigger than me. And that was something that I picked up off of somebody who I looked at getting a course from. And he was doing a live feed, and he talked about how when you're starting to build a brand and it starts to get bigger and bigger, it's not about just you anymore. It's about the people around you. And so I think, and I found this with a few other books and just life in general, in that when I'm not feeding a totally self-centered attitude, but looking at feeding people around me and giving them something that inspires them, that my general happiness is better. So that's the whole point of sober motivation. That's the whole point of producing this consistent content, putting it out as much as I can, because it's not just for my sake of doing it, although it helps a lot in that it prevents me from being in my own head. I believe that the content is useful since like I've said, I pay attention to the trends that are flowing on my YouTube, and one of the most highly viewed videos or podcasts besides just how I spent $40,000 on alcohol is how to be consistent in sobriety, and that is my second most viewed video. And it's cool to see that, hey, this is something that I'm giving to you that I think would help you, and it's just getting a lot of consumption. And I think that when you figure out how to do something that doesn't just benefit you for the money's sake, but it's benefiting other people for beyond the money's sake. And I think that's been extremely helpful also, with that idea in mind, with, for instance, building this podcast. There's no way that if I were just talking about things that I wanted, that there would even be content. So for me to sit here and talk about, hey, I want this, or I really want this, nobody's going to pay attention to that. So for me to figure out, hey, having, for instance, a book that I think that is beneficial for you guys to maybe get an idea or understand has been pretty useful to go with. So it says, when your intent is self-interested, customers won't tell others to come buy from you, and they won't come back. And so that's pretty interesting. And I agree with that. I also think that, for instance, as I was saying before, with the content that I've been producing on Facebook, with some of the motivational quotes that I've put up. So one of the quotes that I put up on Facebook that has actually been getting a lot of traction is this quote that I put up with a person in the background who's standing on this rock ledge, and it says, "Never be bullied into silence." And that is a quote by Harvey Fierstein, and he is an American actor, playwright, and voice actor who has won Tony Awards for Best Actors in a Play for his own play, Torch Song. And so, pretty fantastic quote. I posted it up on Facebook, and it's been getting quite a bit of attention. So it's just the idea that the less you're self-centered and you're more trying to put out things that you think are going to actually help other people is where you can actually see the brand grow. And so the next point in this book is to say, don't worry about creating content, document instead. It says, why not regularly share your world with Snapchat or Instagram stories or Facebook Live, documenting moving into your new apartment or whatever hobby you're doing. Maybe it doesn't work out, but maybe you get an audience that earns you $50,000 a year through advertising, brand endorsement, and affiliate marketing. And you could even land a book deal. So I think that is a good idea to make, and that's actually kind of what I've been doing with building this whole podcast and this whole sober motivation idea, is that it's kind of documenting just what's going on in my head. And if I, for instance, come across good ideas where I'm just excited to hear about it, it's more that I'm documenting what that information that's going on in my head is than just creating content. So I believe that's a good point to make in regards to document versus just creating content, because I feel as though this is where your authenticity comes out also, and you're not just creating stuff to put it out there. It kills the idea of quantity over quality. So I believe that producing quality obviously is more important than quantity. Obviously, you still need to do enough to where it's growing, but it at least gives you something to work off of. And for instance, for myself, as I've been creating content, I get to see what people think in regards to the idea of what I'm putting out. And much of it has just been documenting what's been going on for me. And like sobriety, I'm documenting what's going on in my sobriety, and I get to see kind of what people are vibing with or what people are interested in looking at. And then that honestly gives me the ability to kind of think about, okay, this is a good idea for content then, or a good idea for me to document. So I think it works along the way. As you're documenting, you start to believe or find out what is worth creating content about, especially when you're first starting. So the next point that this makes is Snapchat offers an unpolished reality and a real test of your branding abilities. So that is something that is kind of interesting. I haven't went too much into Snapchat. I just think that it's kind of hard for me to navigate, and I honestly don't know if I have the patience, but maybe it's something that I personally need to go check out and figure out, hey, this is what's working for me on Snapchat. Just kind of an interesting thought. Another point it makes, it says, Twitter is a great place to get noticed with a specific target audience. And I think that is a pretty cool idea. I think Twitter is pretty interesting. I actually don't spend too much time on Twitter, in all honesty, although I'm sure I could probably get some growth out of it if I put the time into it. But something that I've been doing with Twitter, instead of just personally going into it, I have it set up to where whatever I'm posting on Instagram goes to my Twitter. So that is what it is, but I don't really spend too much time on Twitter. I don't really like the idea that I can only type so much, where even Instagram, although it's mostly focused on the visual aspect, that it's whatever I'm trying to type out isn't limited. So it's just something I just don't like with Twitter. But I know that obviously people are gaining influence on Twitter. I mean, I don't I don't want to name names as far as who's got great influence in Twitter, but it is what it is. And then the next point it says YouTube is the best platform for creating wealth and opportunity, and you should get on it now. It says, did you know young adults watch more video on YouTube than any TV network at prime time? And while you probably won't get on NBC anytime soon, you could be on YouTube today, which is certainly true for myself. And people hold, and this is the next point, I'll sum it up a little bit in a little bit of a smaller idea or point. It says people don't want to go on to YouTube because they don't think that they're an expert or they're not that interesting. And then it talks about how you don't need to be an expert to launch a vlog. For instance, for myself, for me to tell you that I'm 20 years sober is obviously a complete lie. There's no way I'd ever be able to compete with that. But the reality is that I'm learning my own sobriety, and that I hope you guys are learning about your own sobriety or whatever it is as I'm building it. Because you never know. So maybe, for instance, you're learning how to build or do woodwork, and as you're learning, you're documenting it. And some people might be put off by the people who are experts in the field and want to find somebody who's more relatable in what they're doing. And I think that that's something that is actually been working for me as I've been building this channel, because as I've been building it, I've learned that some people with a lot of time in sobriety are thinking, hey, this guy's no expert on what he's doing. He has no idea about sobriety. He's been in this for a short amount of time. And that is what it is. I get it. But honestly, that's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. And I don't think it should. And like I've said before, it's been helpful for me to be working on this and staying sober. So if, for instance, same thing with you guys. Honestly, I don't care if you guys use this as a tool for yourselves to learn about your own sobriety or learn about building something in your life. If it's, say, woodworking, or say you buy a car, a project car, and you know nothing about project cars. Honestly, I would love to watch somebody figure out how to work on a project car that has no real mechanical understanding to begin with. I think that'd be interesting. Actually, I might even go look it up and see if there's somebody out there like that. And then it says, however niche your interests, they'll find an audience on YouTube. So it talks about how garage sales aren't exciting, but there's somebody out there with over 400,000 views. And after 400,000 views, obviously, if you guys don't understand how YouTube kind of works currently, and it's kind of where I've been sort of aggressive with building this, even though I'm not sure if it's the perfect way to do it. I know some people are telling me, hey, don't go door to door knocking for subscribers, but it is what it is. But this person, they have 400,000 views, and so if you're trying to monetize on YouTube, for instance, you have to get 1,000 subscribers, and then you have to get 4,000 watch hours, and the 4,000 watch time hours has to be accumulated in the past 12 months. So that is a pretty interesting point, I think, to point out to you guys, that even if what you think isn't exciting, or if you think something in general isn't exciting, that doesn't really matter, because somebody is finding it interesting. For instance, one of the top performing YouTube channels is somebody who just reviews toys that they buy, and they're making millions of dollars, which is crazy. I mean, think about it. Think about the idea that somebody is just opening up toys, putting it on YouTube, and then they're multi-millionaires for that idea. And people are just, some people say it's stupid, and I might agree that the idea is stupid, that they're just wealthy. But, you know, if it's there and somebody's doing it, I can't hate on somebody's success. So it just is what it is. And then it says the best way to get on YouTube is simply to do it. Just start. If your videos aren't great, So what? Nobody is watching them to start with, apart from your mom, and they'll get better with time. And if they don't, at least you tried and you figured it out. And I think that's actually worth talking about for myself, with just simply doing it, just starting. And I mean, that honestly, that first video to put out, and I look at it and I see how bad the video is that I put up. I believe I renamed it, because at first I was going to call this YouTube channel Speak Motivation, and the way I did the vlog is just terrible. And I actually went to the beach and I was trying to get it recorded, and I spent all day trying to figure out what I could do to make it work. And there's a few things that I figured out that didn't work. For one is not really having a real idea of what I was going to talk about before I hit record. Was sort of a big mistake that I made. And another thing was having poor audio quality makes the video kind of hard to watch, and then the visual quality is also pretty bad. But I learned as I'm doing it, because hey, just getting that first one going honestly was pretty important to me, because as I've said before, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. So just getting started, it's the same obviously with being sober. Being imperfectly sober honestly is being perfectly non-sober. So taking that idea with me right now, obviously when you first don't drink and you're sober, it is what it is. Honestly, you are perfectly sober, honestly, pretty immediately. But I believe sobriety really, it's never fully perfect. I think that everybody has imperfections. Everybody has an issue, whether it's fighting cravings or fighting boredom to fight cravings. But if even those thoughts exist, but you're still imperfectly sober, even with the cravings, it's better than you to totally cave in and go back to what is a self-destructive point. And I feel the same with, for instance, building this podcast and building the YouTube. Obviously the videos are not perfect. I haven't hit viral status yet. I haven't been able to just totally monetize off of those videos yet. But the key point to make is that it started. And the other key point to make is that I get to figure out if this is actually going to work or not. And so for me, that's actually more exciting than figuring out, hey, it's perfect. And honestly, I'm almost more glad that it isn't perfect when I first started. Say if the first video that I made already hit perfection, right? Say if everything was already perfect. For one, you're only as good as your last time up at bat. And I think that I would be pretty bored if it was just perfect the first time. I think that would create problems with me. And I'm actually more glad that I get to enjoy the process of building this. I get to enjoy the idea of, hey, what's the next video going to be about? Hey, like, how am I going to structure what I'm going to talk about today? Oh, hey, something that else I get to work on is my speech skills. Honestly, I'm a poor public speaker. It is what it is, but I get to work on it. I get to go back, listen to what I put together, and face what I put together and fix it. And it just gives me a process to continuously work on and honestly keep my mind off of my demons that I've struggled with drinking. Honestly, it cuts that time out. And I think that's the power of doing this. And I hope that maybe some of you guys would take that inspiration for yourselves. I would love it if somebody else told me, hey, I bought this podcast stuff and I want to collaborate with you and talk about just things in general or anything, and thanks for whatever. That's what I'm really getting out of this more than, hey, I need to be the most famous YouTuber. I need to be the most wealthy YouTuber or Instagram person, because I don't really care about that. I care more about the quality of it. And so for me, I find a lot of quality in what I'm doing, as I kind of feel that the quality of my life in general has just generally improved. So the next point that it makes, it says, Facebook still combines clever distribution with innovation to make it the single most important channel. Maybe you've heard people criticizing Facebook recently, saying it's where baby boomers share photos of their grandkids and that young people aren't there anymore. Well, in reality, and I agree with this, Facebook is still massive. And from building my brand, honestly, it's incredible. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if you've never made your own Facebook page, when you build it, so if you decide to go into Facebook, I might do a whole video on this, honestly. If some people aren't aware of how to actually build a Facebook page and how to get it some growth, it might be something that in the future I'll go into real depth on how to build it. But so you can open up your own Facebook page, you can start posting, and then you can go and invite people directly into the page. And that's one thing that you can do too, but you can also do what's called a post boost. And this will actually, if you're on Instagram and you're on Facebook, you can connect them together and you can boost them. So it's kind of an interesting thought, and it's pretty cool for me because I have a few posts that I've boosted to get the page following up and increasing. And it's not too expensive because this is the way I worked it out, right? So for the whole brand, there's a little bit of upfront cost with, for instance, I had to do a podcast course first. That was around $200. And then I had to get the equipment. That was another $100. And then there's monthly subscriptions that I'm tied into that help me with building this. So for instance, one of them, if you guys are going on trying to make a podcast, two subscriptions that I use that work pretty well with building up my YouTube channel. One is Simplecast. It's $15 a month. I'll leave a link to it too if you guys are interested in starting a podcast, and I'll leave you guys the podcast equipment that I'm using in the descriptions also. Simplecast is fantastic, and then I use this other subscription called Repurpose, and what Repurpose does is it takes what is on Simplecast and it regurgitates it basically to YouTube. So that's where I've been able to work on just putting out content consistently, but also on top of that, I can put it on Facebook and then boost it and get it some more attention if I want it to. So, like I said, it's pretty interesting. And then I think the other point too is that there was a little bit of upfront cost for me with the equipment and the subscriptions, but the overhead to actually running all this, I'm not spending probably more than $100 a month. And honestly, for me, I think that's well worth the money for the fact that, one, it keeps me consistently busy, and obviously alcohol costs however, I know for a fact I was spending probably around $400 a month easy on alcohol. So for me to be running a fully functioning almost brand through all of my different platforms with a podcast and YouTube included, to be only paying around $100 a month is great. And it's been useful with, like I said, just eating up my time, because when I wake up and I look at my just phone in general, because obviously that's where I get a lot of my notifications, it's just growing and growing and growing, and it's just so intense. So the next point it makes is Instagram is more important than ever with a mix of content and great discoverability. And that is actually really true as well. It's almost interesting for me because, so something that I was doing with Instagram before, like when I first got sober, my wife, she made a post about how she was setting up my man cave, and I was always against Instagram but I was kind of being a troll about it, and I said, no, the man cave is never complete. It's not nearly complete. And I put a bunch of crazy things in there. I bought some Star Wars lightsabers. I bought a Iron Man suit just because I thought it was funny. So next time when she said, hey, it's completed, the man cave is completed, there's going to be an Iron Man suit in there. But as she didn't, I don't think she ever posted it, but I made my own Instagram to post the pictures, and I just kept posting on Instagram. And I didn't realize how easy it was to actually build an audience there. And I wasn't spending any money. I was just working on growing it organically and finding people to get to follow the Instagram account. But it's crazy at like how useful it is if you're trying to build something for a personal brand. And you could probably go on Instagram. You don't even have to go on to Facebook or YouTube or any of the other platforms like I'm going out to. You could just stick on Instagram and just post just once to 3 times a day and just grow it. And it's so easy to grow, and it's crazy. And on top of that, you can actually boost the posts. Like I said, with Facebook, you can boost posts. But you can, if you switch your Instagram over to, say, a business or a creator account, you can choose, say, for instance, if there's some post that you're making and it's getting a lot of likes, you might be interested in posting that or boosting that just to get more followers. And then you can get to a point, obviously, to where if you've got so many followers and so many people interested in whatever you're doing, then that's where you can start advertising whatever somebody wants you to advertise, or if they want a shout out, or if you're trying to start your own store. I used Shopify to open up my store, and honestly, I think that Shopify is a great tool if you guys are interested in opening up an online store and you guys want to sell a particular product. They're great at doing that, and I think I pay $30 a month, and that's still keeping me under the $100 a month with running my particular brand. But Shopify is pretty great with getting an online store going and selling products that you're interested in pushing. But as I was saying, as you're getting more followers, and say, for instance, you open up an online store and you want to sell certain products, well, now you've got a whole audience, and if they're engaged into your Instagram enough, like I said, you don't even have to go to Facebook, you don't even have to go to YouTube. You just freaking grow on Instagram, just posting pictures all day and selling products, and make, whatever amount of money. The sky's the limit, obviously. And so, and then it goes into the last point, and it says, the hottest trend right now is spoken word media. Get on board before it's too late. And it talks about how podcasting is exploding. And I actually have to agree to that idea because, for instance, right, I'm going to make a vlog. The vlogs, they just take a lot of time to produce. And I'm sure some people's podcasts take a lot of time to produce, but if you're doing video, there's a lot of logistics that go into it, between how you're going to film it, the lighting, the audio, the editing, the publishing, and figuring out how to promote it. But so that is what it is. And then on top of that, to get 10 minutes out of a video is another task. So if, say for me, for instance, if I was trying to do at least a 10-minute video, that's going to be anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes of video that I have to have at least recorded. And it probably needs to be more if I want it to be real good quality than just, say, 45 minutes. I might need 2 hours to get real good quality, get all of the good takes into the 10-minute video that I'm trying to hit. Because on top of that, with the 10-minute videos, usually that's, I guess, the sweet spot that is recommended if, say, for instance, you're trying to get it onto YouTube and get it monetized. that gives you more time to put multiple ads in the video. So the podcast, I think, shines for entrepreneurs and people in general for two reasons. One of the things that has really worked for me with building this podcast is that I'm not spending too much time editing it, and I'm not sure that I really want to go in there and cut out certain things. I kind of like the idea of being from the heart and just talking to you guys. And the other thing too is that when I get it posted to YouTube with Repurpose, like I said, it's a great app. I'll post a link in the description, but it just gives you that ability to consistently put out content onto, say, YouTube, and then it allows you to get the view time that you need in the future, so that in the future that it all adds up to where you get to those watch hours that you're going to need. And even if you don't hit the watch time that you need for the year, if you're still building an audience, say, for the year, and you get to the next year and you're still maintaining the same audience, chances are that watch time for the next year come around more than likely will hit the monetization point. So I think I really think that if you guys are trying to get something going for yourselves, I really highly recommend the podcast idea. And as I've said, the equipment it's not too much. It's basically you spend $100 I bought a podcast arm, and then I bought I think it was like a $60 microphone, the ATR 2100, and there's a pop filter and then a shock mount. And it all cost me less than $100 for the equipment. And then I record with Audacity, which is completely free, but if you want to go into more depth with editing and whatnot, you can buy Adobe Audition, which is, I think, another, I'm not sure how much it is, but obviously for me right now, where advertisement isn't too in there right now, I mean, my only source of real income with when I'm making these podcasts is Blinkist, and then my Amazon affiliate links that I've been posting up. So it is what it is, but the overall cost of just getting the podcast together and produced, edited, and published, it's small and so much easier than doing a vlog. And while I still suggest figuring out how to get your time correctly to where you could do a vlog, if you really don't have the time and you're just doing a podcast in the meantime until you get the time or the idea or the logistics of getting a vlog out, the podcast is a great way to go. So that leaves us with the final summary of the book. It says, if you are stuck in a job you don't like, or have a business but don't feel like it's going anywhere, then figuring out how to have the courage to change it is basically something that you should do. And then it says to build a life and a business around something you truly love, whether it's helping people learn about whatever you're learning about, tree sales or garage sales, whatever your passion might be. Document your journey on social media. Use social media to get those eyes to follow you, and distribute the ideas across Facebook and Instagram, and just keep looking to grow. And honestly, at that point, the sky's the limit, and that's where I feel it for myself. The sky at this point is the limit. It's almost crazy for me to where when I wake up in the morning and I see all of these new people following me, I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And Instagram growing, and I see my YouTube growing, and it's just so awesome to see it. But on top of that, it's like this, right? So when I was drinking, one of the issues that I would have when I would wake up, obviously, if I was still hungover, the first thing I'd be thinking is, oh man, I'm hungover, I need to drink. Or if I just go to work and I have an annoying day, the first thing I'm going to is drinking. So when I leave work, it's not, oh hey, like now I'm gonna go drink. Now it's fuck, I got a lot of work to work on this sober motivation brand. I got to manage my followers. I got to promote it. I got to work on it. So I think that this podcast should give you guys an idea of how to maybe work on something other than just thinking about how to stay sober. I think having something that just totally helps you find something that you really work on is worth thinking about. And so the final point it leaves us with, so what are you waiting for? Get out there and crush it. So crush it in your sobriety. Don't fall victim to it, to your cravings or relapsing, because I'm telling you, when you're in your sobriety and you're crushing it, that's where the compound interest and all of that stuff I feel as though works together, and your sobriety just becomes way better than anything. Like it's crazy to me to think how much better life is with sobriety as it's grown over time. So there you have it. Episode 6 podcast, Crushing It in Sobriety. Thank you guys all for joining me for this session. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you guys could do me a favor, please crush the like button and crush the subscribe button, and I will see you all soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sober Motivation Radio. If you're not subscribed already, please be sure to do that right now. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could do me a quick favor and rate and review the podcast. This lets the platform know that I'm doing something right and people like the content. It would be a huge help, and I would be grateful. Be sure to head over to sobermotivation.com and pick up the Sober Motivation ebook. This book will teach you about sobriety, motivation, maintaining sobriety, and motivation. Also, what would be some of the key things that you can do afterwards when becoming sober so that you can maintain the positive attitude to stay motivated and sober. Until next time, stay sober and stay motivated.